صلوات. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. وإن من شيعته لإبراهيم إذ جاء ربه بقلب سليم إذ قال لأبيه وقومه ماذا تعبدون أئفكا آلهة دون الله تريدون فما ظنكم برب العالمين فنظر نظرة في النجوم فقال إني سقيم فتولوا عنه مدبرين فراغ إلى آلهتهم فقال ألا تأكلون ما لكم لا تنطقون فراغ عليهم ضربا باليمين فأقبلوا إليه يزفون قال أتعبدون ما تنحتون والله خلقكم وما تعملون قالوا بنوا له بنيانا فألقوه في الجحيم كيدا فجعلناهم الأسفلين وقال إني ذاهب إلى ربي سيهدين رب هب لي من الصالحين فبشرناه بغلام حليم فلما بلغ معه السعي قال يا بني إني أرى في المنام قال يا بني إني أرى في المنام أني أذبحك قال يا بني إني أرى في المنام أني أذبحك فانظر ماذا ترى قال يا أبت افعل ما تؤمر ستجدني إن شاء الله من الصابرين فلما أسلما وتله للجبين وناديناه أن يا إبراهيم قد صدقت الرؤيا قد صدقت الرؤيا إنا كذلك نجزي المحسنين إن هذا لهو البلاء المبين وفديناه بذبح عظيم وتركنا عليه في الآخرين سلام على إبراهيم كذلك نجزي المحسنين إنه من عبادنا المؤمنين وبشرناه بإسحاق نبيا من الصالحين وباركنا عليه وعلى إسحاق ومن ذريتهما محسن وظالم لنفسه مبين. صدق الله العلي العظيم.
صلوا على محمد وآل محمد. ہر درود اور ہر سلام مادر حسین تیرے نام. ہر درود اور ہر سلام زوجائے علی سربلند فاطمہ عظیم ارجمند جس کے آستان پاک کے قدسیان عرش ہے غلام. ہر درود اور ہر سلام. ہاں وہ فاطمہ آرزو قلب مصطفیٰ جس کے لاڈلے حسن حسین جس کی بیٹیاں فلک مقام. ہر درود اور ہر سلام خواہر حسین تیرے نام. ہر درود اور ہر سلام. ثانیے جناب سیدہ اللہ اللہ تیرا حوصلہ خوب کی حفاظت حرم بعد قتل سید انام. ہر درود اور ہر سلام. بی بی غم اٹھائے ہیں بہت دل پہ داغ کھائے ہے بہت، تجھ پہ اے حسین کی بہن ہو گئے مصیبت تمام، ہر درود اور ہر سلام دختر حسین تیرے نام، ہر درود اور ہر سلام، شمر کبریا کا واسطہ تجھ کو مصطفیٰ کا واسطہ، بنت شاہ بے گوہر نہ تھی، مبتلا غم ہے تشنکام، ہر درود اور ہر سلام، شمر کے تماچے کھائے ہیں، بی بی کتنے غم اٹھائے ہیں، باپ کی جدائی کم نہ تھی، تجھ پہ قید کے ستم ختم، ہر درود اور ہر سلام، بی بی آپ پر ستم ہوئے، مر گئی پدر کا غم لیے، آئی جیت جی نہ چھٹ سکا، قید خانہ امیر شام، ہر درود اور ہر سلام، صلوات۔
Brothers and sisters, at this time, can we please welcome Shaykh Mohamed Ali Ismail to the minbar with 3 loud salawats. Muhammad wa ali Muhammad salawat.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين الحمد لله الذي له ما في السماوات وما في الأرض وله الحمد في الآخرة وهو الحكيم الخبير والصلاة والسلام على المبعوث إلى كافة الورى شاهدا ومبشرا ونذيرا وداعيا إلى الله بإذنه وسراجا منيرا أبي القاسم محمد اللهم صل على محمد وعلى أهل بيته أئمة الهدى ومصابيح الدجى الذين أذهب الله عنهم الرجس وطهرهم تطهيرا. أما بعد فقد قال الله سبحانه وتعالى في كتابه الكريم: بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الرحمن علم القرآن خلق الإنسان علمه البيان. صلوا على محمد وآل محمد. Elders, dear brothers and sisters, beloved young ones, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. Over the last couple of nights, we've been exploring the Quranic art of communication. We've been looking at 6 principles from the Quran as to how we can effectively communicate. And we've also been seeing how these principles were lived at Karbala. So we saw both the theory and the application of it in its written form and in its living human embodiment. And we've been looking at 2 principles per night. The first night we looked at the speaker, and the speaker revolved around firstly the principle of sidq, the principle of having one's inner self aligned with what is being said, so that the person acts according to what they are saying. They believe in it, they act upon it, and they are truthful within themselves about it. The other principle with regards to the speaker was the bond, that close relationship that must exist, at least from an initial perspective. There must be some connection through mercy and gentleness even. That's the minimum that is required in order for there to be a bond. Then last night we moved from the speaker to the listener, and we looked at 2 principles related to the listener. With regards to the listener, first of all, we said that we need to calibrate properly. That means we need to understand where the listener is coming from, their state. So this is looking at where the listener is at that particular moment. And then the 4th principle, the second one relating to the listener, was the register, meaning the modes of delivery. And we looked at the famous verse in Surah Al-Nahl, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talks about 3 modes. One which is wisdom, hikmah. That is something that appeals to someone's mind. If that is required, if some reasoning, rational proof and argumentation is required, then hikmah is the right mode. The other one was to have mau'idha hasana, a beautiful exhortation, good counsel, good advice. This is when the person needs to speak to someone's heart. It's not their mind now. They already know, but they need to now act and be moved and be motivated to do the right thing. And then the 3rd register that the Quran presented was the register of jidal in the ahsan way, meaning in disputing in the best way possible. And this is when the person is opposed, is challenged, and therefore the person who is speaking has to respond in a way that leaves the door open. They don't respond in a confrontational way, even if the other side is being confrontational. Of course, there comes a time when it goes to another level, but the primary focus is to remain composed and not just break out as if they are now confronting the other in the same way that they are being confronted. Jidal ahsan, in the best way possible. So this was a summary of the previous 2 lectures. And tonight we'll look at the hardest state. This is the state relating to 2 final principles. And I'll explain why it is regarded as the hardest out of all the states. Not just the state of the listener or the speaker, but now it's something very, very difficult. And it's very apt that we look at this final state, because it's the state that was exemplified after Karbala in the best possible way. So the two questions that I'd like to ask this evening are, first of all, when someone opposes you and argues with you and even attacks you, how should you be? In what state should you be in? Instead of losing yourself, how must you act with regards to someone who opposes or attacks or confronts you? And then the second question is, when you are finally speaking to someone, are you seeking to be understood or are you seeking to impress? This is one of the hardest things, and inshallah we'll begin our discussion about these two questions with a loud salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. So with regards to the first question, that when someone attacks you, confronts you and challenges you, how should you be? Well, the key word with regards to this fifth principle is composure. Composure under objection. I briefly touched upon that verse in Surah Al-Nahl, verse 125, which spoke about the three modes, the registers. And there we looked at Jidal Ahsan, disputing in the best possible way. This tells us that when it comes to someone who's being argumentative, it's not that we avoid argumentation. That's not what is our aim. Because the Quran tells us that this is one of the ways that you must engage with the listener. But it must be done in the best way. So it's not avoiding it, it's being in the argument, but addressing the challenge in the best possible way. A beautiful verse that explains this is Surah Al-Saba, verse number 24. And this is quite shocking because it's the Blessed Prophet Rasulullah Akram sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, Allahumma salli ala Muhammad, who's actually saying this to someone who's completely gone astray. وَإِنَّا أَوْ إِيَّاكُمْ لَعَلَى هُدًى أَوْ فِي ضَلَالٍ مُبِينٍ. It's really incredible the way this verse is structured. He says that indeed we or you are either upon guidance or in clear error. Who is speaking here? None other than the Blessed Prophet. But when he is being challenged, look how he responds. He says, either I am in error or you are. Of course, the Blessed Prophet knew that with absolute certainty he was on the right track. But you see what he's done here? He's approached that confrontation in a way that keeps the door open throughout the conversation and even afterwards. He approaches it in a way that doesn't put the listener in a corner right from the outside by saying, you are in error, and of course I am the Prophet, I am the one who is rightly guided. He doesn't say anything like that. He says, one of us is in error. Either you are or I am. Allahu Akbar. What humility. This is when the person has no ego. It's only because of our egos we will start changing the words to suit our egos and start even with our body language, the way we are, and the arrogance comes out, the ego takes over, and we feel that, well, of course, we are with the truth, so why should we even bow down? Why should we even give them any hint that they could be on the right track? But the Blessed Prophet, through the instruction of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, tells this person in this way. It's a real courtesy to the listener, what he's doing here. He's giving them this amazing sense of respect, and then that really forms the foundation of what transpires afterwards. Keeping the door open right from the outset. Let's look at this in practice. So that was a word. How about how it transpired in the form of some actions, in a real scenario? For this, I'd like to turn to Surah Al-Baqarah, verse number 258. This involves Nabi Ibrahim, ala nabiyina wa alihi wa alayhi salam, when he is confronting the tyrant of the time. And the verse says, قَالَ إِبْرَاهِيمُ رَبِّيَ الَّذِي يُحْيِي وَيُمِيتُ. So he says, my Lord is the one who gives life and causes death. Okay? So the respondent tries to play just a trick on the words, because Ibrahim has spoken about his Lord being able to give life and death, he then responds by saying, well, I can do that. Because what he had done was to release a prisoner and then command another prisoner to death. So in his argument, he had already given life and death. Just like Ibrahim was saying, my Lord is able to give life and death, he says, well, I can as well, by releasing one prisoner, sentencing another one to death. قَالَ أَنَا أُحْيِي وَأُمِيتُ, I give life and death. Look how Nabi Ibrahim responds with composure when he's being challenged in this way, in that very wise manner. قال Ibrahim, فَإِنَّ اللَّهَ يَأْتِي بِالشَّمْسِ مِنَ الْمَشْرِقِ فَأْتِ بِهَا مِنَ الْمَغْرِبِ. He says that God brings the sun from the east, so you bring it from the west. If you think that you can do whatever I am saying my God can do, then do this one then. He brings it from the east, you bring it from the west. The verse goes on to say the final conclusion. فَبُهِتَ الَّذِي كَفَرَ. The one who was disbelieving was dumbfounded. He was lost for words. So what we see here is that whole process of remaining composed, not being offended in a way that manifests itself in words and actions that will put the other person in a corner, and when they're in the corner, they just want to defend and attack more and more and more. So it's responding with such wisdom, with clarity, with composure. This is what Principle 5 is all about. Now, I'll give you an everyday example. So these were some verses of the Quran and how this great prophet dealt with this principle. Think about when you are part of a family WhatsApp group. I'm sure many of you have such WhatsApp groups, and there arises some tension. For example, it's Eid, and everybody is trying to chip in something and contribute towards an Eid gathering. Now, your cousin says to you that, well, look at you, you're not doing anything. You never do anything. It's always us. Does that resonate with anyone? So this is a situation where the person could easily just blow out, right? He could really all of a sudden just try to respond and say, what do you mean? How about you? Look what you do. Didn't I do this? Didn't I do that? And so on and so forth. It could lead to months and months of disunity in the family. Now, the recourse to really take is not that. Soon as your fingers start trying to type in the response, take a pause. Instead of responding in a confrontational manner, what you should do is just reflect for a moment. What's happening here? As soon as you feel that heat rising, that's a sign. That heat rising and you getting really angry should tell you that, no, I need to stop here. Remember the verse in Surah Sabah. If the blessed Prophet can say, either I am in error or you are, then we can surely demonstrate that humility as well. Surely we can put aside our ego and respond in a way such as, well, I can understand your frustration. Can we discuss it? I'm sure we can figure it out. Let's talk privately. When are you available? And so on. Just remember two things. Pause. Soon as you feel that heat coming up and you want to quickly respond in that way, pause, think about it. What it's going to do is going to cause perhaps months of disunity and disruption in the whole family, probably spoil the Eid event altogether. And think of the verse in Surah Sabah where none other than the greatest of Allah's creation says in a very humble way, well, it's either me or you who are in the wrong. Let's work it out and let's see how things transpire. Sallallahu ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. So this brings us now to the sixth and final principle. And the question here is that when you are understood, are you, or if you are trying to be understood, or Are you trying to impress? So the sixth principle, in other words, is you must try to be understood. Not that the other person thinks, wow, he's so good, he's so clever, he's so smart. The aim is bayan. This is the key principle that we'll now discuss. This is why I said it's the hardest out of all the principles, because here the enemy is not in front of you, the enemy is within. The enemy is within because naturally our egos will want to always be admired. Our egos will want to be exalted in the eyes of other people. But if that is going to come into play, our communication will never be effective because we will never be sincere. That very first principle of sidq will not hold true. And if that doesn't hold true, then the other principles won't hold true either. Now, the idea here is that we look at how the Quran again describes itself. I did this previously. If Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala can describe His words in a particular way, then why not us when we are communicating with others? The same principle applies here. This verse is in Surah Al-Qamar and is actually mentioned 4 times in Surah Al-Qamar. If it was mentioned once, it would be enough. But just to illustrate the importance, it's as if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying, I don't want you to neglect this principle by repeating it 4 times. وَلَقَدْ يَسَّرْنَا الْقُرْآنَ لِلذِّكْرِ فَهَلْ مِن مُدَّكِرٍ. He says that, and we have certainly made the Quran easy for remembrance. So is there anyone who will be mindful? What is this telling us? How does this relate to the question, are you seeking to be understood or to impress the listener? The key word here is yassarna. So this means made easy. And the principle derives from this verse because it tells us that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has revealed the greatest word that has ever existed, the Quran. The Quran is the deepest, most profound book that has ever come into existence. It is full of knowledge and wisdom and guidance. It's from a divine source, and yet He is saying yassarna 4 times. We have made it easy. 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 Why? So that people become mindful. They understand the message. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala didn't want to reveal a book that is so high and exalted that we all just say, wow, this book is just so great in terms of its eloquence. It has all of that, of course. But we, in addition, say that it is so easy to follow. It is so clear. It is so purposeful. It gives us so much guidance. Who would have thought that we could have a whole series, and in fact, this can easily turn into a whole training program, which inshallah it will develop as. But who would have thought that the principles of communication can be derived from the Quran? In the same way, I mentioned this to the youth group the other night. Everything that we are seeking guidance for, we must look at the Quran first and foremost. It must be the initial source for all of our guidance. Whatever issue you have in your life, first point of reference must be the Quran. You might think, well, this is something to do with my profession. What's the Quran got to do with it? This is something to do with accounting, law, engineering, teaching. I can tell you that we can devise and design, and people have done plenty of courses in these areas, all derived from the Quran. It just requires a little bit of thought, research, time and effort. These days, in particular with AI, it can be made much easier. Of course, with AI, we have to be careful. We can't rely on AI for everything, especially with regards to things like the Quran, Hadith, and so on. But especially if you have access to some scholars and you can get some guidance, then it is a fantastic tool to at least start the process going. And then you need to discuss with scholars and look at other places for verification and just to make sure you're on the right track. But AI can do so much to at least get us going. Just to put it in. what does the Quran say about so and so issue? You see, you'll be totally amazed. And then you can build on it and grow with the Quran. Use it as your manual of guidance for your life. I often say to my students that unfortunately we know our textbooks, our regular textbooks, whether it's maths or history or geography, whatever it might be, better than the Quran. It's such a shame. How is it that we know other books, and some people, even with novels, I love reading my novels, and sometimes I repeat them after a few years. Some people will know the characters in those novels, right? Whether it's Harry Potter or, I know, some of the Lord of the Rings series or whatever the case might be. They know their characters much better than the characters in the Quran. They know lines off by heart. They'll know exactly where to turn to when they want to go back to something. That really beautiful passage that they love, they'll mark it, they'll underline it. They'll look at commentaries. They'll go on YouTube. What have critics have said about such and such volume or passage or character. And the whole life, before they know it, is really taken over by these other works. What about the Quran? We totally neglect it, unfortunately, or at least sometimes and in certain situations. And really I feel that this is something that we must all keep in mind for everything that comes into our lives. Sallallahu ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. So coming back to the whole point about having that right frame of mind. Here I'd like to point to those verses I mentioned at the beginning of this majlis. The first 4 verses of Surah Ar-Rahman. Look at the order of these verses, right? You might think that, well, it's not quite in the natural order. See what you think. Ar-Rahman, okay, the all compassionate. Allamal Quran, he taught the Quran. Then Khalaqal Insan, Allamahul Bayan. So he created man and he taught man clear expression, bayan, right? This is the whole focus of this whole series. Is there something strange about this order or not? The first thing that comes to mind is that he begins with his beautiful name Ar-Rahman, the all compassionate, the one whose mercy extends to every single living thing. His general mercy, Ar-Rahman. Without this, nothing would exist. So here, he places it first. The whole surah is full of blessings. And so he starts this surah full of blessings by introducing the one who is the giver of all blessings, Ar-Rahman. Then, Allama al-Quran, he taught the Quran. Out of all those blessings which I mentioned, and of course that verse about the blessings for بِأَيِّ آيَاتِ رَبِّكُمْ يُكَذِّبَانِ is mentioned 33 times. He talks about his blessings. The greatest one is the Quran. So that comes next. He taught the Quran. But then خَلَقَ الْإِنسَانِ, okay? عَلَّمَهُ الْبَيَانِ. So now, why is it like this? Perhaps, shouldn't it be خَلَقَ الْإِنسَانِ then عَلَّمَ الْقُرْآنِ? Because who does he teach the Quran to? He needs human beings to exist first in order to teach them the Quran. Why is it like this? Well, there could be a few reasons. One of them, of course, is to give the importance of the Quran. Especially you who teach the Quran, this is something for you all to hold. That you are being honored here. The Quran, the greatest blessing of all of Allah's creation. That's why I'm stressing so much. We must use the Quran for everything that we want in our lives. It's the greatest of His blessings, so He starts with that first. Also, note how He mentions Ar-Rahman before teaching. This is something for all of you who are teachers in madrasa or elsewhere, even in the home. You're all teachers in some way or the other. Why does he start with Ar-Rahman, then Ta'aleem, teaching? It's something for us all to bear in mind, especially when we are annoyed with our students. That boy, that girl is really driving us crazy. This is something very important for us to bear in mind. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is first compassionate and then He teaches. In the same way, we must be compassionate with our students and then teach. When they are really driving us up the wall, as they do, remember this, compassion always as much as possible. Compassion before teaching. خَلَقَ الْإِنسان, He's created insan. Now, عَلَّمَهُ الْبَيَانِ, He teaches insan the clear expression. This is so important. Of all the attributes of a human being, would you have really thought that bayan would be the foremost? Insan, how many attributes can you think of that are so important? What's so great about a human being? And yet, so you could think of a whole list of attributes, right? Qualities and characteristics. Yet, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talks about communication. He has taught man and mankind the art of articulate speech, of expressing themselves clearly. Because without this, like I mentioned in the first lecture, without effective communication, nothing can really happen. You can't build trust, you can't build relationships, you can't transfer your message to others, you won't have understanding with each other. Everything would be in chaos. And therefore, we should bear this in mind, that bayan is so important. We must strive in order to align ourselves with this verse to make sure that we are as clear as possible. Sometimes it doesn't mean being able to speak clearly and in a very eloquent way. It's not just about that. It could be writing. It could be in your actions, the way you are, the way you present yourselves. That's also communicating a message. What about the way you are silent sometimes? Silence can be the most powerful thing in the world. So it's nothing, you can't say that, oh well, I'm not a public speaker or I'm not good at this. There will always be something that all of you have which will enable you to have good bayan. And the other things, yeah, we all need to work on the other things as well. None of us are perfect. We'll have some strengths, some weaknesses. So we work on those weaknesses, but in those strengths that we have, we try to put forward the message of the truth, the message that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants us to portray, to bring ourselves and others closer to Him in whatever profession we're in. It doesn't have to be, religion that we are totally engaged with. Whatever profession, at work, at school, at play, in the mosque, wherever we are, how we conduct ourselves, how we speak, how we are silent, how we write, all of these things can really help us fulfill this amazing statement, Allamahul Bayan. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. Now, an example I'd like to give here is, let's say we got two teachers. You might have come across this as well. A student comes up to two teachers, he asks them the same question. One gives an answer, like let's say he wants to know why there is suffering in the world, okay? And one teacher gives a very elaborate, philosophical answer, quotes different philosophers and theologians. The student goes away thinking what? That perhaps he's intelligent, he's very smart, but I didn't understand a word. Another teacher answers the question in a very simple way. What do you think is the most effective one? Who is the most effective teacher with regards to answering this question? Of course, it's the second. So the idea is not to impress, the idea is to make the other person understand, to clarify their doubts, and to bring them that one step closer to the truth. So now, a practical advice for us all for this final principle, and that is to pause. When we have communicated something in whatever way, pause and reflect, especially at the end of the day or at the end of that conversation or communication, that did I use correct words? Was I really trying to make the other person understand? Or was I trying to make the other person be impressed with me? What was it that I was seeking? Were you sincere or not? That's one thing. The other thing I would recommend is that sometimes, just to see, are you getting it right or not? This is what I used to do a lot, especially when I first started teaching and doing some public speaking. I used to ask that, okay, can you tell me what my message was? Can you tell me what my answer was? Can you tell me what I said? And if the person couldn't, and I know that they are smart guys, if they couldn't, I knew that I hadn't reached that right level. I was either being too high, too low, not choosing the correct words, and so on. So this is something that we can all do. Ask the person, can you just repeat back to me your understanding? Not only will that tell you that, okay, have you got the pitch and everything right, but also if they have got something wrong, you'll be able to correct them. Always ask them. This is something that we do as teachers, constantly having that type of very quick answers in the class. Okay, what do you think of that? And can you paraphrase this? And so on and so forth. So in this way, we understand, are we at the right level? And we can correct any misunderstanding. Sallallahu ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. And the final piece of research that I'd like to bring to illustrate the principle that I was just explaining is from Daniel Oppenheimer in 2006. Now, he wrote this piece of work, and he wanted to illustrate the point in the very title he chose for his work. Okay? Let me read out the title and see if you can understand what the title means. And then I'll tell you what his point was, right? So it's actually a joke. He's playing a joke here by purposely wording his title in this way. Consequences of erudite vernacular utilized irrespective of necessity. Who can tell me what that means? It's so confusing, isn't it? Right? He's proving a point here. That was his main title. Consequences of erudite vernacular utilized irrespective of necessity. And then he writes a subtitle in plain, simple words. Problems with using long words needlessly. That's what it means. The problems with using long words needlessly. So, like I said, he's having a little bit of a laugh here, but he's trying to get his point across what his whole research was about. So what he did was, he looked at some real text, essays, dissertations, even the translation of a Western philosopher, and he produced two versions of each of these texts, right? One, the original, like graduate student essays and their dissertation, abstracts, René Descartes' philosophy, passage of it, the original. And then he edited those passages in a way that replaced the easy language with very difficult language. It was the same thing, the same message, just like his title and subtitle, but he started using long words and complex terminology. And then he wanted to try and find out, when he asked people about these two works, which author is the most intelligent, he wanted to find out what they would say. Now, normally, we would think that they would say the one with the long words, the difficult terminology, the fancy language points to the more intelligent author, isn't it? Right? Because look how well he's using the language, etc. But actually, the findings were the opposite. People said the one which had the simpler language, those authors were more intelligent. This is very important. So when we're looking at this final principle of clarity, bayan, it's not using fancy language, it's being effective, using the right words in the right time. Sometimes, yes, we need to use some difficult words, long words perhaps, some terminology, if it's the right time and place to do so. And especially if we can't find other words which give that same meaning in the same way. That's fine. But then we can follow up with some easy explanations and so on, right? It's not that we don't use long, fancy words when the time is right. It's overall, when it's needless, that's the key thing. If it's no point in doing that, then don't. Keep it easy. وَيَسَّرْنَا الْقُرْآنَ, right? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, we made it easy, لِلذِّكْر, for remembrance. If Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's speech is like that, then who are we to do it otherwise? And then he found that there's a deeper process happening here. Now this is something absolutely central. He found that what's happening here is what is known as processing ease. How easy is it to process that communication? If people find our communications difficult to process, right? Meaning they have to really think hard, what is happening here, what is being said here, what is being written here, or they have to go back and listen to it again and again, or reread it, then that processing ease goes away. It's no longer easy for them to process. Nobody likes to tax their minds unnecessarily, right? They want to quickly, move on to the next thing. So processing ease is the key thing. And he found that when there was needless difficulty, the processing became difficult. And that's when people just said that those were more intelligent than the ones using the tough language. So we have to try and identify the barriers. What are the barriers to people processing our communication? It could be the long words, the wrong the terminology in the wrong place. But it could also be our sentences are tangled, right? We're using easy words, but the syntax is all wrong. It could be that we are rushing. We want to get our message across so quickly that it's too fast. Processing ease drops. It could be that we are not getting our words out clearly enough. We are mumbling our words. It could be something to do with delivery. It could be something that we are trying to decorate our speech in a way that people feel impressed, rather than just making it easy and making it simple for them to understand. And so over time, reflection and pinpointing what these barriers are, we can start to remove them one by one. We all have barriers. Like I said, we all have strengths and weaknesses. The idea is to work on the weaknesses, build them up to strengths, and make the strengths stronger and stronger. So that brings us to the end of this series. I'd like to just say a few words of thanks to you all for being such a fantastic, welcoming community. I've really enjoyed my stay here. Inshallah, I hope we can meet again sometime. I'm at your service for anything you'd like to know, especially someone was asking about Hawza. I think it was announced at the beginning of this lecture series that one of the responsibilities on my shoulders is Hawza Online. If any of you are interested in that, then please do let me know. We're starting the new semester in September, so this is the time to join Hawza Online. And in any other way that I might be of service, do let me know. So thank you so much, especially a warm thanks to the organizers, and may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless you all as individuals and as a community, and accept all of our efforts, inshallah. Sallallahu Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Before we mention a few words of Masahib, let's recite some dua together that, oh Allah, enable us. First of all, oh Allah, protect our Imam and hasten his appearance. Oh Allah, forgive us and our forefathers for our sins. Oh Allah, bring relief to all those in difficulty around the world. And oh Allah, enable us to put these principles into practice so that we have effective communication in all forms of the art of Quranic communication. Sallallahu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. The Quran gives a very special word for a particular type of speech that incorporates all the principles of communication. and that is qawl baligh. Qawl baligh is a word, is a phrase that refers to speech that gathers all of these principles together and hits home. It's a word that is effective, a word that reaches, a word that lands. And this is mentioned in Surah An-Nisa, verse number 63. Balagha is to arrive, to reach a destination. And tonight I'd like to look at the statement of a lady who did this in the most beautiful way. She had the qawl baligh in the most testing of circumstances. I'm of course referring to Lady Zainab Salamullah alayha. I'd like to first of all put the whole situation in context. Just imagine what's happening, my dear brothers and sisters. Ashura has just taken place. Imam Hussain alayhi salam is lying on the plains of Karbala. His family members, his companions have all been slaughtered. Now the women of the holy household and the children have been taken captive. They have been taken to Kufa, they have been taken to Sham, they have been chained, they have been whipped. And now we see Lady Zainab walk into the court of Yazid. Yazid, he is there, and in front of him is none other than the sacred head. Yazid, in his utmost depravity, takes a stick and hits the teeth of Sayyidu Shuhada's head. At this point, look at principle 5 being applied by Holy Lady Zainab. Composure when we are being attacked, when we are being challenged, when we are being confronted. Does she collapse? Does she wail? Does she scream? She remains dignified. And this is what turns everything round. This is a power that Yazid has no control over. He does not expect this lady who has come in from having seen all of these calamities, wearing worn out, dusty clothes, having experienced the greatest of griefs, to act in this way. And then what about the sixth principle? How she wants to be understood, how she wants to make sure that she is using qawl baligh, the most expressive, perfect form of communication that hits home. She starts off by saying, Alhamdulillah. She praises Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And she says exactly what the truth was. She lays it out, not what Yazid was interpreting events to be like. She lays out the truth, and she says that you will never wipe away our remembrance. Look at the result. Yazid, his whole focus is turned. Now he's thinking, what is she saying? What is happening here? The whole court changes. Her words become baligh. They arrive. They transcend that room. They transcend time. And they are even present with us here today. This is why we have gathered, because those words were baligh. They reached us. They arrived. And in such a way that we are mourning Abu Abdullah and all the shuhada and usara, the captives of Karbala, after 1400 years. But of course, the most famous statement of hers, and one of the most famous statements in the history of Islam, was what she said in Kufa to Ibn Ziyad. So Ubaidullah ibn Ziyad asks her this wretched question, that how did you see what God did to your brother Hussein? How did you see that? Look at the response. Look at the power of her communication. One line, Ma ra'aytu illa jamila. I saw nothing but beauty. This is the art of the word. The return to Medina was something that involved another hero of Karbala, Imam Sajjad alayhi salam. Now Imam Sajjad has the responsibility of leading the ummah. When they are approaching Medina, he turns to Bashir ibn Hadlam. Medina, it had experienced a type of arrival some 60 years ago. This was the grandfather of Imam Hussein. When he arrived in Medina, there was joy. People had come out. They were in celebration and welcoming the Prophet. Now look at the welcoming of the caravan of Sayyid al-Shuhada's family. How are they entering? It's the total opposite. So Imam Sajjad tells Bashir that I knew your father, may Allah have mercy on him. He was a poet. Bashir says, yes, I too am a poet. So Imam Sajjad says, can you recite some words of poetry like your father used to? And he says, I can do that. So Imam Sajjad tells him, then enter Medina and tell the people of Medina what has happened to my father Abu Abdullah. Bashir says, I entered Medina. I went to the mosque. I raised my voice. I was weeping and I recited, Ya Ahla Yathrib la muqama lakum biha. He says that, O people of Yathrib, the name of Medina in the past, no dwelling remains for you here. Meaning, how do you go on living as you did before? How can a city now sleep after this has happened to the grandson of the Prophet? And then he says, what has happened? قُتِلَ الْحُسَيْنُ فَأَدْمُعِي مِدْرَارٍ. Hussein is slain, and my tears pour down in streams. Al-jismu minhu bi Karbala mudarraj. His body at Karbala lies drenched in blood. He's talking about the body that used to run in the streets of Medina. He's talking about Imam Hussein, who the Prophet lovingly used to kiss. And then he talks about the sacred head of Abu Abdullah, the head that the Prophet used to kiss with such affection. And he used to put it in his lap. Where is his head now? وَالرَّأْسُ مِنْهُ عَلَى الْقَنَاةِ يُدَارِ. And his head is paraded upon a spear. Allah la'natullah ala al-qawmi zalimin. وَسَيَعْلَمُ الَّذِينَ ظَلَمُوا أَيَّ مُنْقَلِبٍ يَنْقَلِبُونَ مَاتِمَ حُسَيْنٍ.
Ya Hussein, Ya Hussein, Ya Hussein, Ya Hussein, Ya Hussein, Ya Hussein, Ya Yasrab nazar aaya, Yasrab nazar aaya, Yasrab nazar aaya. Yasrab nazar aaya, Yasrab nazar aaya, Yasrab nazar aaya. कुलसूम ने महमिल के जो पर्दे को उठाया, यसरब नजर आया, यसरब नजर आया. अपना था वतन और अपना था वतन और पराया नजर आया, यसरब नजर आया, यसरब नजर आया, यसरब नजर आया, यसरब नजर आया. मुँह ढाप के रोने लगी अहमद की नवासी, ویران در و بام تھے اللہ رے ادافی اجڑا بنی ہاشم کا اجڑا بنی ہاشم کا اجڑا بنی ہاشم کا محلہ نظر آیا یثرب نظر آیا یثرب نظر آیا یثرب یثرب نظر آیا وہ گلیاں جہاں آنو محمد کبھی کھیلے عبداللہ وہاں پھرتے تھے خاموش اکیلے ہر سمت میں بچوں کا ہر سمت میں بچوں کا سراپا نظر آیا یثرب نظر آیا یثرب نظر آیا یثرب یثرب اپنا تھا وطن اور پرایا نظر آیا یثرب نظر آیا یثرب سغرا نے خبر پائی کہ لوٹائے مسافر خوش ہو گئی روزے پہ نبی کے ہوئی حاضر کیا سوچا تھا سغرا نے کیا سوچا تھا سغرا نے اسے کیا نظر آیا یثرب نظر یثرب نظر آیا یثرب نظر آیا یثرب جس وقت رکی نانا کے روزے پہ اماری ناکے سے گری خاک پہ وہ درد کی ماری روتا ہوا نانا کا روتا ہوا نانا کا روتا ہوا نانا کا جو چہرہ نظر آیا یثرب نظر آیا یثرب نظر آیا یثرب نظر آیا اپنا تھا وطن اور پرایا نظر آیا یثرب نظر آیا یثرب نظر آیا یثرب نظر آیا یثرب نظر آیا یا حسین یا حسین محمد و آل محمد صلوات
السلام عليك يا رسول الله السلام عليك يا أمير المؤمنين السلام عليك يا فاطمة الزهراء السلام عليك يا خديجة الكبرى السلام عليك يا حسن المجتبى السلام عليك يا أبا عبد الله وعلى الأرواح التي حلت بفنائك عليك مني سلام الله أبدا ما بقيت وبقي الليل والنهار ولا جعله الله آخر العهد مني لزيارتكم السلام وعلى علي بن الحسين وعلى أولاد الحسين وعلى أصحاب الحسين وعلى 9 المعصومين من ذرية الحسين: علي بن الحسين ومحمد بن علي وجعفر بن محمد وموسى بن جعفر وعلي بن موسى ومحمد بن علي وعلي بن محمد والحسن بن علي والحجة بن الحسن، عجل الله تعالى فرجك وسهل الله تعالى مخرجك وظهورك. السلام عليكم جميعا ورحمة الله وبركاته.